Blood pooling on the rain-sick pavement wasn't part of Chloe's Tuesday shift. Neither was the terrified 7-year-old girl clinging to her torn apron. When you save a child from a bullet, you expect a fleeting moment of gratitude. You don't expect Chicago's most ruthless syndicate boss to claim your life in return. The rain in Chicago that November felt less like water and more like shattered glass. Chloe Harper shivered, pulling the thin fabric of her uniform cardigan tighter around her shoulders as she wrestled with the heavy steel door of Le Petit Palais. As a waitress, pulling double shifts to chip away at her late mother's crushing $43,000 medical debt, taking out the trash at 11 p.m. was just another miserable bullet point on her daily survival list. The alleyway behind Astor Street was dimly lit, reeking of damp cardboard and discarded truffles. Chloe hoisted the black plastic bag into the dumpster, wiping a mix of sweat and rain from her forehead. She was exhausted. Her feet ached, her bank account was overdrawn by $12, and she had exactly 4 hours to sleep before her morning shift at the diner across town. She turned to go back inside when she heard it, a soft, melodic giggle that entirely belonged to the wrong zip code at this hour. Chloe paused. Peering through the curtain of heavy rain, she squinted toward the mouth of the alley. A little girl, no older than 7, was skipping along the pavement in a bright yellow raincoat. She was chasing a drenched, terrified stray kitten. "Hey!" Chloe called out softly, stepping away from the restaurant's back door. "Sweetie, where are your parents?" The girl didn't seem to hear her. She giggled again, cornering the kitten near a stack of wooden pallets. Chloe glanced left and right. There was a hulking man in a tailored suit standing about 20 yards down the sidewalk, aggressively tapping on a glowing cell phone, momentarily distracted. Before Chloe could take another step toward the child, a matte black SUV rounded the corner with its headlights completely off. It didn't cruise. It prowled. It stopped with a quiet screech of brakes right where the alley met the street, directly between the distracted bodyguard and the little girl. The hairs on the back of Chloe's neck stood up. Growing up in the South Side, you developed a sixth sense for trouble. The silence of the idling engine was deafening. The back doors of the SUV slid open. 2 men poured out. They moved with terrifying, practiced efficiency. No shouting, no hesitation. They wore dark tactical gear and black ski masks. One lunged straight for the little girl. "Lily!" The bodyguard down the street finally looked up, his voice cracking like a whip. He reached into his jacket, sprinting forward, but he was too far. Chloe didn't think. The human brain isn't built to process the logistics of a kidnapping in real time. It only registers a threat. In a surge of blind, protective instinct, Chloe grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a solid iron crowbar the kitchen staff used to prop open the loading dock doors. She hurled herself across the wet asphalt. The first masked man already had his hand clamped over the little girl's mouth, lifting her off the ground. "Let her go!" Chloe screamed, swinging the iron bar with every ounce of strength her exhausted, 90-pound frame could muster. The heavy iron connected with a sickening crack against the side of the man's knee. He roared in pain, his leg buckling instantly, his grip loosened, and the little girl dropped to the pavement. Chloe didn't waste a millisecond. She dove, tackling the child to the wet ground, wrapping her own body over the girl's small frame like a human shield. "Get her!" the second man yelled. Chloe felt a violent yank on her hair, snapping her head back. She kicked out wildly, her non-slip waitress shoes connecting with someone's shin. She saw the glint of streetlights catching on steel. A switchblade. The blade slashed downward, in a vicious arc. Chloe twisted, taking the blow meant for the child's back directly into her left forearm. Pain, sharp and blindingly hot, exploded up her arm. She gasped, but refused to let go of the trembling girl beneath her. Bang! The deafening roar of a gunshot echoed through the narrow alley. Concrete showered over Chloe's back as a bullet ricocheted off the brick wall inches from the attackers' heads. The bodyguard had closed the distance, his sidearm drawn, his face a mask of absolute lethal rage. Realizing they had lost their window, the man with the bleeding knee hobbled toward the SUV. The second man abandoned his grip on Chloe, diving into the vehicle as the tires spun violently against the wet asphalt. The SUV tore off down the street, disappearing into the rainy Chicago night. Chloe lay on the ground, gasping for air, the rain mixed with the warm blood pouring down her arm, staining the white cuffs of her uniform a deep, horrifying crimson. Beneath her, the little girl was sobbing quietly, her small hands clutching fistfuls of Chloe's cardigan. "I got you," Chloe whispered, her voice shaking violently as shock began to set in. "You're okay. I got you." Heavy footsteps splashed toward them. The bodyguard, a mountain of a man with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, dropped to his knees beside them. His hands were shaking. He holstered his weapon and gently pulled the little girl from under Chloe. Lily. Dio mio, Lily, are you hurt? He asked, frantically checking the child for wounds. No. The little girl hiccuped, pointing a tiny, trembling finger at Chloe. But the pretty lady is bleeding. The bodyguard turned his intense gaze to Chloe. He saw the deep laceration on her arm, the blood pooling around her on the pavement. I'm fine, Chloe stammered, trying to push herself up with her good arm. Her vision blurred, the edges of the alleyway turning dark and fuzzy. I need to go back inside. My manager is going to kill me for being out here so long. The bodyguard stared at her, an expression of profound disbelief crossing his hardened features. You have no idea what just happened, do you? I fought off muggers. Chloe slurred, swaying slightly. I need a band-aid. Before she could comprehend what was happening, the bodyguard scooped her up in one arm as easily as if she were a child, holding Lily tightly in his other hand. You aren't going to a hospital, he said grimly, and you sure as hell aren't going back to work. That was the last thing Chloe heard before the blood loss and adrenaline crash dragged her into the dark. Chloe woke up to the smell of antiseptic and expensive leather. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to soft, recessed lighting. She was lying on a plush examination table, wrapped in a heated cashmere blanket. Her left arm throbbed with a dull, heavy ache, but it was neatly bound in crisp white bandages. This wasn't Chicago Med. The walls were lined with dark mahogany bookshelves. A state-of-the-art heart monitor hummed quietly in the corner, contrasting bizarrely with the Renaissance paintings hanging above it. It looked like a billionaire's study that had been retrofitted into a trauma bay. You have 22 stitches. The blade missed your radial artery by less than a millimeter. The voice came from the shadows near the heavy oak door. It was a dark, resonant baritone that sent an immediate, instinctual shiver down Chloe's spine. It commanded the room without raising its volume. A man stepped into the light. He looked to be in his mid-30s, wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that hugged a muscular, broad-shouldered frame. His face was striking, defined by sharp cheekbones, a strong jawline, and dark, brooding eyes that seemed to pull the oxygen straight out of the room. He radiated power. Not the loud, flashy power of a politician, but the terrifying, quiet power of a predator who owned the jungle. Who are you? Chloe asked, her voice raspy. She pulled the blanket tighter around her chest. Where am I? Where's the little girl? Lily is upstairs. She is sleeping, the man said, taking a slow step forward. She was unharmed. Entirely because of you. He stopped at the foot of the examination table. My name is Gabriel Moretti. Chloe's heart stopped. Even in the poorest neighborhoods of Chicago, you knew that name. You whispered it. The Moretti family controlled the shipping docks, the unions, and half the politicians in the state. Gabriel Moretti wasn't just a businessman. He was the head of the city's most untouchable crime syndicate. The Mafia? Chloe breathed, her eyes widening in sheer panic. She instinctively pushed herself backward on the table. Gabriel's expression remained entirely impassive, though a muscle feathered in his jaw. I am a logistics executive, Miss Harper, but the people who tried to take my daughter tonight, they are monsters, and you threw yourself in front of their blades. He picked up a sleek tablet from a nearby mahogany desk. Chloe Harper, 24 years old. You work 60 hours a week at Le Petit Palais and take weekend shifts dog walking in Lincoln Park. You live in a cramped one-bedroom in Pilsen, no criminal record. Drowning in medical debt from your late mother. He set the tablet down. You are a nobody, a ghost in the system. Yet, my head of security watched you attack a trained killer from the O'Connor Syndicate with a piece of scrap metal to save a child you didn't even know. I saw a kid in trouble, Chloe whispered, her hands shaking. Please, I didn't see anything else. I won't talk to the cops. Just let me go home. I have rent due on Friday. Gabriel stepped closer, bracing his large hands on the edge of the examination table. His dark eyes locked onto hers, pinning her in place. The scent of bergamot and danger rolled off him. You don't understand, Chloe, Gabriel said, his voice dropping an octave, slipping into something dangerously intimate. Victor O'Connor sent those men to take my daughter to force my hand in a territory dispute. They failed. But the alley camera across the street caught everything. They know exactly who ruined their operation. They know your face. Chloe's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I am saying that if you walk out of this compound and go back to your apartment in Pilsen, you will be dead before sunrise, Gabriel stated, matter-of-factly. Panic seized Chloe's chest. No, I'm just a waitress. I have nothing to do with this. You made yourself a part of this the second you swung that iron bar, Gabriel countered, his gaze intense. The O'Connors don't care that you're an innocent waitress. They only care that you humiliated them and cost them their leverage. Tears pricked the corners of Chloe's eyes. The crushing unfairness of it all threatened to break her. So, what? I'm just supposed to die because I tried to do the right thing? Gabriel's eyes softened just a fraction. He reached out, his warm, calloused fingers gently brushing away a stray tear that had escaped down her cheek. The touch was shocking. Electric. I am a man who pays his debts, Miss Harper, Gabriel said quietly, his thumb lingering on her jawline. You gave my daughter her life tonight. I am giving you yours. Chloe stared at him, bewildered. How? As of an hour ago, your apartment lease in Pilsen has been terminated. Your medical debts are paid in full. Your belongings are being packed by my staff. Gabriel stood back, straightening his perfectly tailored cuffs. You live here now, under my roof, under my absolute protection. You can't do that! Chloe exploded, the adrenaline finally overriding her fear of him. You can't just kidnap me. I am not kidnapping you, Gabriel replied smoothly. I am keeping you breathing. You will stay in the East Wing. You will have whatever you desire, clothes, food, entertainment. But you will not leave these gates until I have dismantled the O'Connor family and removed the threat to your life. I am not one of your chess pieces, Chloe yelled, swinging her legs over the side of the table. I'm leaving. As her bare feet hit the cold marble floor, her injured arm protested violently, and a wave of dizziness hit her. She stumbled forward. Before she could hit the ground, Gabriel caught her. His strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against his solid chest. She could hear the steady, rhythmic beating of his heart beneath his silk shirt. You are reckless, fiercely brave, and entirely foolish, Gabriel murmured into her hair, his grip firm but surprisingly gentle. Fight me all you want, Chloe. Scream at me, hate me, but you are staying here. Because if anyone thinks they can touch a single hair on the head of the woman who saved my little girl, his dark eyes met hers, and the raw, unmasked violence swirling in their depths made her breath hitch. I will burn this entire city to the ground. Sunlight, painfully bright and entirely foreign, spilled across a sprawling, king-sized bed. Chloe blinked against the glare, her hand instinctively reaching for the buzzing alarm clock that wasn't there. Instead, her fingers brushed against cool, 1,000-thread-count silk. She bolted upright, her injured left arm protesting with a sharp throb. Memory hit her like a freight train, the rain, the alley, the gunshots, the little girl, and Gabriele Moretti's terrifying promise. She threw off the duvet, her breath catching in her throat as she took in her surroundings. The bedroom was larger than her entire Pilsen apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a meticulously manicured private courtyard, surrounded by 15-foot stone walls topped with wrought iron spikes. It wasn't just a mansion. On Chicago's Gold Coast, it was a fortress. A soft knock interrupted her rising panic. A woman in her late 50s, wearing a crisp housekeeper's uniform, entered carrying a silver tray. Good morning, Miss Harper. I am Beatrice, the woman said, her tone warm but professional. Mister. Moretti had these brought up for you. He specifically requested the blueberry scones from La Boulangère on Belmont. He noted in your file that you frequent their day-old discount bin. Chloe stared at the steaming pastries, a mixture of hunger and profound violation warring in her stomach. He has a file on my baked good preferences. Beatrice offered a sympathetic smile. Mr. Moretti is a very thorough man. Your belongings from your apartment have been unpacked in the walk-in closet. The doctor will be up to check your stitches at noon. I don't need a doctor. I need my phone, Chloe demanded, stepping out of bed. She was wearing an oversized, incredibly soft grey t-shirt that smelled faintly of cedar and bergamot Gabrielle's scent. It made her skin prickle. And I need to leave. Your old phone was destroyed, miss. A security risk, Beatrice replied gently, setting the tray down. Please, eat. You lost a lot of blood. The moment the door clicked shut, Chloe abandoned the scones. She stormed into the massive closet, finding her meager, worn-out clothes hanging awkwardly alongside racks of brand-new, expensive designer wear in her exact size. It was suffocating. She threw on her old jeans and a plain black sweater, determined to find the front door. Navigating the estate was like walking through a museum of dangerous secrets. Dark wood, imported marble, and silent, broad-shouldered men standing at the ends of hallways. No one stopped her, but everyone watched her. She found the conservatory by following the sound of a piano. The glass-domed room was filled with exotic orchids and climbing ivy. Sitting at a grand Steinway was Lily. The little girl was plucking out a disjointed, melancholy tune. Her small shoulders slumped. Chloe's heart immediately softened, the anger melting away. She stepped into the humid room. Mind if I sit? Lily whipped around, her dark eyes so much, like her father's widening in delight. The pretty lady! You're awake! Lily scrambled off the bench and launched herself at Chloe. Chloe hissed slightly as her injured arm bumped the piano, but she wrapped her good arm tightly around the child. My name is Chloe, sweetie, she said softly, smoothing down Lily's dark curls. Are you okay? Did you have any bad dreams? Lily nodded, burying her face in Chloe's sweater. I dreamed about the monsters in the rain, but Papa said you beat them up with a magic iron stick. Chloe let out a surprised, breathless laugh. It wasn't magic, just heavy. But the monsters are gone now. They aren't gone, not yet. The voice cut through the warm air like a scalpel. Chloe tensed. Gabriel stood in the arched doorway of the conservatory. He had shed his suit jacket, the sleeves of his crisp white shirt rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and faint, faded scars. He held a crystal tumbler of amber liquid, though it was barely 11 in the morning. He looked exhausted, yet utterly lethal. Go to your tutor, Piccola, Gabriel said softly to Lily. Lily kissed Chloe's cheek and scurried out, leaving a heavy, suffocating silence in her wake. Gabriel walked slowly into the room, his dark eyes fixed on Chloe. He stopped mere inches from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You changed out of the clothes I provided, he noted, his gaze sweeping over her worn sweater. I am not your doll to dress up, Mr. Moretti, Chloe fired back, lifting her chin to meet his stare. And I am not your prisoner. You paid off my debt. Thank you. Now open the gates and let me go back to my life. Gabriel let out a harsh, bitter laugh, taking a sip of his drink. Your life? Chloe, your life was waking up at 4 a.m. to pour coffee for truck drivers, dodging eviction notices, and freezing at a bus stop on 18th Street. Do you really want to die for that? It's mine, Chloe shouted, poking him hard in the chest with her uninjured hand. Hitting solid muscle, she didn't back down. It might be pathetic to a billionaire mafia boss, but it belongs to me. You don't get to erase my existence because I did you a favor. Gabriel's hand shot out, catching her wrist with lightning speed. His grip was an iron vice, completely unyielding, yet carefully avoiding her stitched arm. He pulled her flush against him, the tumbler dropping from his other hand to shatter musically against the marble floor. This isn't a game of pride, Chloe, he growled, his face inches from hers. The raw intensity in his eyes made her breath hitch. Victor O'Connor put a $500,000 bounty on the alleyway bitch who ruined his kidnapping plot. If you walk out those gates, you won't make it 3 blocks. They will hunt you, they will torture you to send a message to me, and then they will leave your body in the Chicago River. Chloe's defiance faltered, her heart hammering wildly against her ribs. The reality of her situation crashed down on her, cold and suffocating. Why? She whispered, her voice cracking. Why are you going to all this trouble for a stranger? Gabriel's gaze dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second before returning to her eyes. The anger in his expression fractured, revealing something dangerously possessive underneath. Because in my world, loyalty is bought with blood and fear, he murmured, his thumb brushing a trembling pulse point on her wrist. No one steps in front of a blade for a Moretti unless they are paid to do so. You risked everything for nothing. I don't know what to do with a creature like you, Chloe, but I know I am not letting you die. Before Chloe could process the terrifying intimacy of his words, the conservatory doors burst open. A tall man with a scarred cheek, the bodyguard from the alley, strode in, his face grim. Boss, we have a problem. It's the O'Connors. They just hit the South Side warehouse. And Gabriel. They knew exactly where the blind spots in our security cameras were. Gabriel dropped Chloe's wrist, the brief moment of vulnerability vanishing instantly. He transformed back into the ruthless syndicate boss right before her eyes. We have a rat in the house, Gabriel said, his voice dropping to a deadly, quiet whisper. He turned back to Chloe, his jaw set in stone. Pack a bag. You aren't staying here tonight. Panic is a cold, creeping thing. For Chloe, it set in as she watched Gabriel's compound tear itself apart from the inside. Men in tactical gear swept the hallways, shouting code words. The safe, gilded cage had suddenly become a trap. "Where are we going?" Chloe asked, jogging to keep up with Gabriel's long strides as they moved toward the underground garage. "The Palmer House Hotel," Gabriel replied tersely, not looking back. "The 5 families are holding a neutral ground charity gala tonight. Victor O'Connor will be there. I am gonna look him in the eye, find out who my mole is, and end this. And I have to go with you?" Chloe balked, stopping dead in her tracks. To a room full of Mafia bosses, Gabriel turned, his expression unyielding. "The mole is someone close to me, someone in my inner circle. This estate is compromised. I cannot leave you here, and I cannot leave Lily." He gestured to a heavily armored black SUV where Beatrice was already strapping a sleepy Lily into the back seat. "We move together. It is the only way I can keep my eyes on you." 2 hours later, Chloe found herself staring in the mirror of a lavish penthouse suite at the Palmer house. She didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. Gabriel's styling team had descended upon her with military precision. They had masked her exhaustion with flawless makeup, pinned her hair into an elegant, sweeping updo, and poured her into a floor-length, backless emerald green silk gown that clung to every curve she didn't know she possessed. A matching emerald velvet shawl strategically draped over her left shoulder, hiding the bulky bandages covering her stitches. The door to the master bedroom clicked open. Gabriel stepped out, adjusting the cuffs of a midnight blue tuxedo. He looked like the devil himself, dangerously handsome, impossibly sharp, and completely terrifying. He looked up, and for the first time since she met him, Gabriel Moretti froze. His dark eyes swept over her, a flash of pure, unfiltered heat flaring in his gaze before he ruthlessly suppressed it. He crossed the room slowly, his footsteps silent on the plush carpet. "You look." Gabriel trailed off, his voice uncharacteristically rough. He cleared his throat. "Victor won't recognize you." The woman in the alley was covered in rain and blood. "Tonight, you are my date? An heiress from Milan? Do not speak English if you can avoid it. Stay by my side. Do you understand?" "I don't know how to act like a mobster's girlfriend," Chloe whispered, her hands shaking as she clutched a small diamond-encrusted clutch. Gabriel reached out, his warm, rough hands gently cupping her face. The friction of his calluses against her soft skin sent a jolt of electricity straight to her core. "You don't act. You just breathe, Chloe. I will handle the rest." The grand ballroom of the Palmer house was a sea of crystal chandeliers, flowing champagne, and deadly secrets. Politicians rubbed elbows with cartel leaders. Billionaires laughed with assassins. It was a masquerade where the masks were tailor-made suits and diamond necklaces. Gabriel guided Chloe through the crowd, with a firm hand resting on the bare skin of her lower back. His touch was a brand, a clear signal to every predator in the room. "She belongs to me. Gabrielle, my old friend." The voice was oily, thick with a South Boston drawl. Chloe stiffened. Turning around, they faced a man in his late 50s, with thinning silver hair and pale, dead eyes. Victor O'Connor. He flanked by 4 massive men whose tuxedos bulged suspiciously under the arms. "Victor," Gabriel replied smoothly, his tone laced with ice. "I'm surprised you showed your face tonight. I heard you had a streak of bad luck in the West Loop alleys recently. Embarrassing, really. Losing a prize to a stray cat." Victor's pale eyes narrowed, a muscle twitching in his cheek. His gaze slid from Gabrielle to Chloe, lingering far too long on her face. A cold, slimy feeling washed over her. "Luck turns, Gabrielle," Victor said, a sickening smile stretching across his face. "Sometimes the stray cat wanders into traffic. Stunning companion you have tonight. She looks familiar. Though I usually picture women like this crying in the rain." Chloe's heart plummeted into her stomach. He knew. Gabriel's grip on her waist tightened painfully. "Walk away, Victor, before I turn this neutral ground into a graveyard." Victor chuckled, raising his champagne glass. "Enjoy the party, Gabrielle. It's going to be a blast." Victor turned and disappeared into the crowd. Gabriel immediately pulled out his earpiece, speaking rapidly in Italian. "Dominic, pull the cars around. We are leaving. Now. The perimeter is blown." "Boss," Dominic's voice crackled through the earpiece, audible to Chloe in the tight space. "It's Silvio. He just disabled the security grid in the north corridor." Static cut him off. Then the crystal chandeliers above them flickered and died. The ballroom plunged into absolute, terrifying darkness. For 3 agonizing seconds, there was dead silence. Then a woman screamed. Crack, crack, crack. Gunfire erupted, deafening and chaotic. The sound of shattering glass and screaming guests filled the massive hall. "Get down!" Gabriel roared. Before Chloe could react, Gabriel tackled her to the floor, his heavy body covering hers just as the marble pillar behind them exploded into a shower of white dust from a spray of bullets. Panic seized the crowd, a stampede of high heels and tuxedos rushing for the exits. Flashes of muzzle fire illuminated the darkness like deadly strobe lights. "Silvio sold us out," Gabriel snarled, pulling a sleek, suppressed handgun from a shoulder holster hidden beneath his tuxedo jacket. "Victor isn't trying to scare me. He's trying to slaughter us." "Where is Lily?" Chloe screamed over the din, pure terror gripping her throat. "Safe room upstairs with Beatrice. We need to move," Gabriel commanded, grabbing her uninjured arm and hauling her to her feet. They bolted toward the catering kitchens, navigating by the dim red glow of the exit signs. Gabriel fired twice into the darkness, taking down a shadow that lunged at them with a knife. He moved with a brutal, terrifying grace, an apex predator protecting his territory. They burst through the swinging doors, into the stainless steel kitchen. It was empty, the staff having already fled. "We go down the service elevator," Gabriel said, pushing Chloe behind a massive steel prep counter. Suddenly, the kitchen doors kicked open. Silvio, Gabriel's trusted lieutenant, stood there with 3 heavily armed O'Connor thugs. Silvio looked apologetic, but his gun was raised. "Sorry, boss," Silvio muttered. "Victor offered me the ports. Nothing personal." "Everything is personal, Silvio," Gabriel growled. He didn't hesitate. Gabriel pushed Chloe down and lunged to the side, firing rapidly. 2 of the thugs dropped instantly. Silvio fired back. Chloe screamed as she saw the impact. Gabriel jerked violently backward, blood spraying from his right shoulder, ruining the midnight blue silk of his jacket. He crashed into a stack of aluminum pots with a deafening clatter, his gun sliding across the wet tile floor. Silvio stepped forward, aiming his weapon down at Gabriel's chest. End of the line, Moretti. Chloe's vision tunneled. She looked at Gabriel, bleeding on the floor, the man who had terrified her, imprisoned her, and promised to burn the city down to keep her safe. She didn't think. Chloe snatched a heavy cast iron skillet off the bottom rack of the prep counter. With a primal scream, she threw herself out from behind cover, swinging the cast iron pan with both hands directly at Silvio's head. The heavy cast iron skillet connected with the side of Silvio's skull with a sickening, hollow crack. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't the trained strike of a hitman. It was the desperate, adrenaline-fueled swing of a waitress from the south side who had simply had enough. Silvio staggered, his eyes rolling back as his finger spasmed on the trigger. A stray bullet shattered the industrial refrigerator glass behind Chloe, raining tempered shards over her emerald silk gown. Before Silvio could recover, Gabriel was already moving. Despite the blood pouring from his right shoulder, the syndicate boss snapped his left hand out, grabbing his fallen weapon from the wet tile. He fired twice. Silvio collapsed, lifeless, against the stainless steel prep station. Silence slammed back into the kitchen, broken only by the hiss of a ruptured Freon line and Gabriel's ragged breathing. "You." Gabriel coughed, bracing his good hand against the counter to keep from collapsing. He looked at Chloe, who was standing frozen, still gripping the bloody skillet with white-knuckled intensity. "You are completely out of your mind." "You were going to let him shoot you," Chloe gasped, her chest heaving as she dropped the pan. It hit the floor with a heavy clang. "I was going to shoot him from the floor," Gabriel corrected grimly, wincing as he pressed his hand to his bleeding shoulder. The midnight blue tuxedo jacket was ruined, soaked through with a dark, terrifying crimson. "But your method worked. We need to move. Now." Chloe rushed to his side, disregarding her own torn stitches, which was screaming in protest beneath her velvet shawl. She wrapped her good arm around his waist. He was incredibly heavy, essentially a mountain of solid muscle, but she braced herself, letting him lean his weight onto her shoulder. They staggered toward the freight elevator, hitting the button for the subterranean loading docks that let out near Wabash Avenue. As the metal doors grated shut, Gabriel's knees finally buckled. He slid down the wall, leaving a streak of blood against the corrugated metal. "Gabriel, hey, look at me," Chloe pleaded, dropping to her knees in the ruined, blood-stained emerald dress. She ripped the expensive velvet shawl from her shoulders and pressed it ruthlessly against his gunshot wound. Gabriel hissed in pain, his head falling back against the elevator wall, but his dark eyes locked onto hers. He reached up with his uninjured hand, his blood-stained fingers weaving into her perfectly styled hair, pulling her face down until their lips were inches apart. "If we die in this garage, Chloe," he murmured, his breath hot against her mouth, "you need to know that Victor won't touch you. Dominic has orders. If I fall, you and Lily disappear to a private estate in Lake Como. You will never have to pour another cup of coffee as long as you live." Tears blurred Chloe's vision. "Shut up," she cried, pressing the velvet harder against his wound. "You are not dying. You promised to burn the city down for me. You can't do that if you bleed out in a service elevator." A faint, bloody smile touched Gabriel's lips. Fierce little stray. The elevator jolted to a halt. The doors groaned open, revealing the cavernous, concrete expanse of the underground loading dock. The air smelled of damp earth, exhaust, and impending violence. Standing beneath a flickering fluorescent bulb, flanked by 2 armored SUVs, was Victor O'Connor. He held a suppressed submachine gun, casually resting the barrel against his shoulder. 5 heavily armed men fanned out behind him, blocking the ramp leading up to the slick Chicago streets. "I told you luck turns." Gabriel, Victor's voice, echoed off the concrete walls, sickeningly smug. "Silvio was always a greedy bastard, but I figured he'd at least cripple you. Looks like he managed that." Victor's dead eyes shifted to Chloe, taking in her bare, blood-streaked shoulders and the desperate way she shielded Gabriel. "And you brought the waitress down here to die with you. How poetic." Gabriel forced himself up, his jaw locked in agonizing determination. He pushed Chloe slightly behind him, shielding her with his body even as he bled. "Victor," Gabriel rasped, his voice a lethal, vibrating threat. "You broke neutral ground. The Commission will hunt you to the ends of the earth for this." "The Commission will follow whoever controls the shipping lanes, Gabriel. And by tomorrow morning, that will be me," Victor sneered, raising his weapon. "Say goodbye, Moretti." Screech. The deafening roar of a 600 horsepower engine drowned out Victor's next words. A massive, bulletproof Cadillac Escalade tore down the exit ramp at 80 miles an hour, smashing straight through the concrete barricades. It wasn't stopping. Victor's men opened fire, bullets pinging uselessly off the reinforced armor plating. The Escalade slammed violently into Victor's parked SUVs, crushing 2 of the gunmen instantly and sending Victor diving onto the hard concrete. The doors of the Escalade flew open. Dominic, Gabriel's head of security, stepped out with an automatic rifle, unleashing a suppressive wall of fire. "Boss, get in!" Dominic roared. Gabriel didn't hesitate. He pulled his handgun, leveling it with deadly precision at Victor, who was scrambling to his feet. "This is for my daughter," Gabriel stated, his voice ringing out over the gunfire. He fired a single shot. Victor O'Connor staggered backward, clutching his chest, before collapsing onto the oily concrete, dead before his head hit the ground. The remaining O'Connor men immediately dropped their weapons, throwing their hands in the air. The king was dead. The war was over. Gabriel lowered his gun. He turned to Chloe, the adrenaline finally leaving his system. The light in his dark eyes dimmed, and without another word, he pitched forward. Chloe caught him, collapsing under his weight as Dominic rushed over to haul them both into the safety of the armored vehicle. 1 week later, the private medical wing of the Moretti estate was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. Chloe sat in a leather armchair beside the bed, wearing one of Gabriel's oversized cashmere sweaters. Her own arm was healing nicely, but she hadn't left this room in 7 days. A low groan broke the silence. Gabriel turned his head, his dark eyes fluttering open. He looked pale, an IV taped to his hand, but the dangerous, magnetic pull of his presence was as strong as ever. "You're still here," he rasped, his voice thick with sleep and painkillers. Chloe set down her book, moving to the edge of his bed. Beatrice makes excellent scones. It was hard to leave. Gabriel's gaze searched her face, mapping every exhausted line. He reached out, his warm fingers wrapping gently around her wrist. "Victor is dead. His syndicate is fractured and absorbed. The threat is gone, Chloe. Your debt is paid. Your apartment in Pilsen is gone, but I have set up a trust in your name. You have $5 million and a new identity waiting if you want it." He swallowed hard, the vulnerability entirely foreign to him. "You are free to walk out those gates." Chloe looked down at the ruthless, terrifying man who had kidnapped her, bled for her, and ultimately saved her. She thought about the cold, lonely apartment in Pilsen. She thought about Lily's laughter echoing in the conservatory. She turned her hand over, intertwining her fingers with Gabriel's. I don't want $5 million, Chloe whispered, leaning down until her lips brushed against his jawline. I don't want a new identity. I want the man who promised to burn the city down for me. Gabriel's breath hitched. His good arm wrapped around the back of her neck, pulling her into a desperate, consuming kiss that tasted of absolute possession and a terrifying, unbreakable loyalty. You're mine, Gabriel growled against her lips, sealing her fate. Forever. A stray bullet and a rusted iron crowbar forged a bond that Chicago's underworld could never break. Chloe Harper stepped into the rain as a drowning waitress and emerged as the undisputed queen of the city's most ruthless syndicate. Sometimes, saving a life doesn't just clear your debts, it hands you the keys to an empire locked safely in the hands of the devil who fiercely loves you.